The purpose of the next video is to provide examples and explanations about the classification of glands. There are many types of glands in the human body, and there are therefore also more classification systems. Let's consider how the glands originate during the embryonic period. They are all derived from some covering epithelia. So let's have an example of embryonic oral epithelium, stratified, squamous, non-keratinized, and this embryonic covering epithelium proliferates and undergoes a process called invagination. The epithelium invaginates deeper towards the connective tissue, towards the underlying connective tissue. And two situations might occur later on. Either the gland that originates by invagination stays connected with the surface, and it differentiates a secretory portion and a duct. So we got the surface here, we got duct, or you might call it excretory portion, and you got the secretory portion that produces some secretion. These glands are called exocrine glands. So once you find a duct in your slide, you might be pretty sure you are looking on some exocrine gland. Alternatively, the connection to the mother epithelium, to the maternal epithelium, might be lost, and the invaginating part becomes independent. And this is the mechanism how glands without duct develop. Glands with no ducts, or ductless glands, are called endocrine glands. An example here would be a follicle of thyroid gland that is lined with simple cuboidal epithelium, and these endocrine glands, they release their incretions into the surrounding capillaries. So this is the follicle of thyroid gland. The connection to the epithelium has been lost. Another example of an endocrine epithelium could be the trabecular epithelium of pancreatic islets, where you can find the blood vessels called blood sinusoids in the gaps among the trabecules of the epithelium. So this is the trabecular epithelium. Of the endocrine pancreatic islets. Which consists of several cell types, the most frequent being A, B, and D, but there are more. A cells producing glucagon, B cells, the most numerous, over 70%, producing insulin, and D cells producing a tissue hormone called somatostatin, that has some negative feedback on the previous cell types, etc. You will discuss the details in your physiology classes. However, this is to illustrate the mechanism of embryonic origin of endocrine glands. And we know that the endocrine glands have no ducts. They are ductless glands, although during the ontogenesis they used to have a duct. Okay. There are more systems how to classify the glands, and more words and terms the meaning of which we should be familiar with. So the glands could be classified, for example, as exocrine. We understand that these glands have both secretory and duct portion. We already know there are also endocrine glands, mostly made of follicular or trabecular epithelium. But there are more types of endocrine glands. The typical large glands have a secretory portion that releases information molecules or substances called hormones into the bloodstream, into the circulation. Via the circulation, the hormones will bind to the target cells. Somewhere in the body, the target cells have receptors either in the cell membrane or on the cell membrane or inside the nucleus. They have receptors for that hormone. However, you will encounter situations such as paracrine, a mechanism where the cells that are producing some hormone are very close to the target cells. So there is no, with the receptors. So there is no need to circulate in large amounts through the whole body. The target cells are in the same organ. Target cell is in somewhere in the tissue contacts in the neighborhood. This is called paracrine secretion. Or a modification of that could be autocrine, where the source cell that produces some substance expresses receptors for the very same hormone. So this is autocrine. It happens normally in bone marrow, in the specific niche of the erythropoiesis. There are some cancer cells who do that. Okay, or for example, a good example for this paracrine secretion could be these D cells that are targeting adjacent cells. A special term, a category, is neurosecretion, because secretion and glandular activity is not the privilege of epithelial cells. So I want to stress out that also some neurons, completely different tissue, nerve tissue, with their cell bodies, might produce hormones. An example would be some hormones of the hypothalamus. This would be the cell body. This would be the axon, through which molecules travel to the periphery, which is located in the posterior lobe of neurohypophysis, in the neuro, in the neurohypophysis, and these cells release hormones of neural origin. Good examples would be antidiuretic hormone, which opens some water channels in the collecting ducts that run through the kidney medulla, where the osmotic pressure in the surrounding tissue is so high that there's a great tendency to literally suck out the water. But the epithelium, which is simple columnar here, is normally water impermeable, with one exception, of water channels called aquaporins that are opened by the antidiuretic hormone. So antidiuretic hormone is released, aquaporins open, and the water could be saved for the body, thus reducing the volume of the urine that is excreted. Another example would be oxytocin, a peptide hormone that triggers the contraction of smooth muscle in the uterus or in the breast gland. Another point of view of classification of glands depends on how many cells are there in the gland. So we got unicellular glands, and a good example for that would be the goblet cells that are among the enterocytes of small and large intestine. We got the regular enterocytes, but suddenly there are cells with a different morphology of nucleus, that is, the basal compartment is compressed, it's not ellipsoid like in the enterocyte, and most of the cytoplasm is filled with myosin granules that do not stain. They remain whitish. So these are the enterocytes, simple columnar cells lining the intestine, and this is the goblet cell, which is a unicellular intraepithelial mucus gland. Another example of unicellular glands is a whole system of endocrine cells that are spread in the mucosa of some organs of the GIT or respiratory passages, and this diffuse and distributed endocrine system is called DES, which stands for diffuse endocrine system, and they release several tissue hormones affecting the activity of some other cells in these organs. And of course there are multicellular glands.